Hello and welcome to Darktide. I'm Shadow Coast and welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to provide an overview of the Psyker class, Psyker Psykinetic class, reviewing the moves and feats. So I've played about 3 hours of the Psyker class. I'm only level 5, so there's a lot more to come, but I wanted to post a preliminary video now that we're jumping into this game that I've been waiting for a long time. At the base, the Psyker class is really focused on single target DPS. That is where it excels with our main ability to basically blitz and deal high damage to a target. So we have Brain Burst. You can use this on high level enemies, bosses, and you deal a tremendous amount of damage. So effectively, if you click G, Blitz replaces your grenade. From there, we also have some nice kind of squad dynamics that helps. So Kinetic Presence, allies, and coherency gain plus 10% damage against elite enemies. That's really important. So if you're with your squad fighting enemies, you're going to gain a bonus boost. Our kind of ability, so to speak, the F key on mouse and keyboard, is Psykinetic Wrath, Quell 50% peril, and stagger enemies in front of you. So peril, effectively what happens with peril is you build up peril every time you're using Brain Burst or Blitz against enemies. And once you hit 100%, bad stuff will happen because we're opening the warp. So we have to quell it. So it is nice to use Psychikinetic Wrath to quell it. We can also focus, which limits our mobility to reduce or quell peril, which is helpful, but that leaves you exposed where you can't really move quickly, block, or attack. From there, we have Warp Siphon. Killing an enemy with Brain Burst earns warp charges. Each charge grants plus 3% damage. Warp charges are retained for 25 seconds, and you can store up to 4 warp charges. So that's plus 12% damage. That really adds up, especially against bosses. So it's very critical that you're building warp charges. You have 25 seconds, which is more than enough to kind of keep building it up and keeping that 4 warp charge, especially during boss fights. Finally, Battle Meditation, plus 10% chance to quell 10% peril on a kill. This is again really critical because peril basically limits our ability to use Brain Burst. And we want to be using Brain Burst on those high value targets. So you have those kind of stronger units. The Psyker is adept at focus firing them down, but you have to target and pick them out to take them out a lot quicker. Now from there we have different call it, I guess, feats or traits that we can add. We gain these as we level up to level 30. So when we hit level 5, we have 3 different options here. Essence Harvest, which replenishes 30% toughness over 5 seconds on gaining a warp charge. So effectively, when we kill an enemy with Blitz or Brain Burst, I'm just going to call it Blitz because that's what they have right here, you gain 30% toughness. Toughness is basically your shield before you start taking damage to your health. The other option is replenish 10% toughness when you kill an enemy on warp attack, warp absorption. This is also nice. And then quietude replenishes 5 toughness for each 10% of peril quelled. I personally like essence harvest and warp absorption because we're going to be using our blitz offensively a lot, so we're going to replenish our shield. The nice thing is you can just between missions just quickly swap whatever you want, so you can play around with it. At level 10, we have Psychic Kinetic's Wrath, gain between 5 and 15% damage with force weapon attacks based on your current peril. So we have unique weapons we can use as a Psyker. We can talk about that a little bit later. Inner Tranquility, plus 6% peril resistance per warp charge. Killing an elite or specialist with Brain Burst applies 2 stacks of Soul Blaze to all enemies within 2 meters of the target. This is really nice because if we want to do some AoE, especially when they're grouped up, we can definitely do some more AoE damage because a lot of our moves are really focused on single target DPS. So that's level 10. I will probably be focusing on Rack and Ruin or Psychic Kinetic's Wrath. Level 15, Psychic Communion. Whenever you or an ally in coherency kill an enemy, you have 4% chance to gain a warp charge. That basically increases our damage, which is really important. Psykinetics Aura, plus 15% combat ability cooldown. This is really, really good. Allies in coherency on elite kill. So this is probably what I'm going to opt for in my build. So we'll experiment, but I'll probably be going with this one. And then Cerebral Lacerations. Damaging an enemy with your Brain Burst ability causes them to take plus 15% damage from all non-warp sources for 5 seconds. So when we're taking on bosses, this one's probably a little better um, from that perspective. So I'll be focusing on these two in my Psyker build. At level 20, Kinetic Deflection. While below critical peril, blocking an attack causes you to gain peril instead of losing stamina. That is nice. Just if we're kind of surrounded and need to block. Kinetic Shield, take between 10 and 33% reduced toughness damage from range attacks based on your current number of warp charges. That's really nice. Your movement speed is not reduced while quelling peril. So I will probably pick Mind in Motion. Like I said, when we quell peril and bring that down, we're really exposed. So this is nice so we can dodge and move around, or at least move around at normal speed. So I'll probably opt for Mind in Motion. Level 25 warp battery can store up to 6 warp charges. This is really critical because then that allows us to get up to 18% damage, which is really nice, plus damage. Kinetic overload, while you have maximum warp charges, gaining a warp charge instead applies 4 stacks of soul blaze to a nearby enemy. This is also really nice. And kinetic flare, all attacks have 10% chance on hit to brain burst the target. This cannot occur while at critical peril and has a cooldown of 15 seconds. Ooh, that's really interesting. I'm not sure which one I'm going to opt for between these. I've been debating. I'm going to probably experiment with all of them. I kind of like Warp Battery, especially for boss fights to maximize damage. But these other two are pretty good too. And finally, at level 30, we have some of the most potent abilities. Psychic Connect Wrath expends all warp charges, reducing cooldown by 12.5 seconds for each warp charge removed. That's really, really nice. Basically, we can kind of reduce our cooldown so we can use different moves again. So this is Psychic Kinetic Grass from that perspective, especially when we build up our warp charges. Psychic Kinetic Wrath expends all warp charges and applies stacks of Soul Blaze enemies hit based on the number of warp charges expended. Enemies killed by your Soul Blaze effects from any source have a 10% chance to grant you a warp charge. This is probably the one I'm going to go with late game, but it'll be situational where we can change it up. And finally, Kinetic Barrage. For 10 seconds after using Psychic Kinetic Wrath, your brain burst charges 25% faster and consumes 50% less peril. This is great because then if we kind of use Psychic Kinetic Wrath, we can then quickly replenish our warp charges because we can reduce the cooldown, use Brain Burst or Blitz more often. So that is an overview of the Psyker class. So far, this is my favorite class. I liked Veteran, and then when I picked up Psyker, it's really nice because you can really help the team by focusing down those really tough enemies very quickly. And you can see there's some really cool, unique feats that we can kind of swap between. So as always, you're going to want to, depending on the mission and the group composition, if you know who you're playing with, you're going to want to tweak your feats so you can readily do that as you take on different missions. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please drop a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Shadow Coast out.